QuaranJazz. Listen while you're home. Hello and welcome to the 21st episode of QuaranJazz. I'm Geisa Fernandes, singer and songwriter from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and I'm your host in this podcast that for the last 21 weeks has been trying to understand what's going on the jazz scene during the year of 2020. The idea for this show came out very spontaneously while discussing with other musicians what could we do this back then in March when the pandemic was all new. Well, I'm still confined, so this show is being produced with the technology that's now available and a lot of faith that we are giving our contribution to these foggy days, that maybe later in the future, while listening to QuaranJazz and the testimonials of the jazz musicians about how they coped with this weird time, we will have a more accurate portrait of our lives. Maybe later in the future, when we ask ourselves, but how did we survive that year of 2020? QuaranJazz will help a little bit with the answer. When I started QuaranJazz, I didn't think that the project would last that long, really. But, well, it is there, alive and kicking. So in order to celebrate it, QuaranJazz has now its own playlist on Spotify with all the songs played during the episodes, plus bonus tracks from my guests. Well, it's an amazing playlist. It's really pretty cool. You definitely should check it out. It's very easy. The link will be in the description of this episode, as well as the link to my webpage, geisafernandes.com, where you can find a contact form, and the link to the Social Distancing Festival, another pretty cool action that emerged during the pandemic. If you're more into social network, then I would suggest you to join the group The Touring Jazz Musician on Facebook, where we talk about jazz festivals that accept submissions directly from artists. The Touring Jazz Musician, you will find us on Facebook. My guest this week is a real citizen of the world, and she will bring the sunlight to this episode. And that's because her name means sun in Portuguese and Spanish. I'm talking about the pianist and composer Sol Jang. Welcome, Sol, and thank you so much for being part of QuaranJazz. So nice to have you here. I can relate to your story so much, this changing places and countries, but I don't want to spoil the surprise to our listeners. So, as usual, I will start by asking you to describe yourself, introduce yourself, tell us about your story, your influences, your music background.
Hi, everyone, and Jesa. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to participate in this wonderful idea and talk about my music and myself. My name is Sol Jang. I'm a South Korean pianist and composer who currently lives in the city called Arnhem, located in the Netherlands. Here in Arnhem, I'm organizing a session and music concert for the venue called Grand Café Metropole. I'm also working as a dance accompanist for Dance Academy Artes Academy in Arnhem, which is the art university that I received my master's degree. So briefly about my musical background. I started to play the classical piano when I was 6. My mom was a working mom always. She wanted to hire a nanny for my sister and myself, but she couldn't find a proper one. So instead of hiring a nanny for me, she hired a piano teacher. And it was a very nice decision for her. I'm very thankful for her. And I just fell in love. And so I guess that's why my music is still heavily inspired by a lot of great classical composers and classical music. Although I love to play classical music and I'm still very obsessed, but I wanted to explore more, wanted to compose more, wanted to improvise rather than just playing on the sheet or like trying to follow what was the purpose of the composer when he or she wrote this piece. I just like wanted to create something like solely for myself. So it was quite natural decision for me that I decided to become a jazz musician, or I fell in love with jazz. I think I was like 16. I remember quite clearly for the first time that I ever listened to Bill Evans and Makoto Ozone. For those who never heard about Makoto Ozone, he's a great Japanese jazz pianist. You guys should check that out if you haven't checked him out yet. Yes, it was mind-blowing. Then I started to dig into jazz listening. I listened to a lot of Herbie Hancock and Return to Forever when I just tried to dig in on jazz listening. And actually, like Herbie Hancock's records, Headhunters, and Return to Forever, Chick Corea's, and led me to play synthesizers. It was quite interesting, like still it is very interesting to create your own sound through synthesizers, and you can actually mimicking a lot of different instruments if you only have decent synthesizer or keyboard in your place. However, my early musical career wasn't involved in jazz at all. I got an opportunity to participate in one of the famous talent show in South Korea called The Great Birth. I participated season 2. I can say it was a bit similar to X Factor, so Korean version of X Factor. Instead of playing jazz in the show, I mainly play crossover music or pop music. It was a great experience. I learned a lot through this TV experience. Even though it was a great show and I enjoyed it a lot, but I wanted to achieve my lifetime goal, which is me becoming a jazz musician. That's why I decided to study in States. So I studied University of the Arts Philadelphia. In Philly, I learned the basic and core knowledge of jazz, especially swing and bebop vocabularies or language, whatever you want to call it. And I got an opportunity to work with a lot of great Philadelphia-based jazz musicians such as Tom Lawton, Mary Ellen Desmond, Randy Kaporalik, and Tony Micheli, all of those great jazz musicians. It was a great time. I think I'm very fortunate to get to know them. Around 2015, I was very into avant-garde jazz or free jazz, and I mainly listened to a lot of contemporary jazz records from ACT or ECM, and that was the reason why I ended up in Europe right now. I always love to listen to a lot of different style of music. Music is so fascinating to me. It always was, and it always will be. So my music inspired by a lot of different genres. Of course, like traditional jazz. I think that's where I came from, because I started to play jazz like professionally with traditional style of jazz. So of course, and classical music. That's also part of my life, huge part of my life. Pop, funk. And now I'm very into hip hop and alternative rock, and of course like free improvisation and film music. All of my experiences in 3 countries, which is South Korea, Seoul, South Korea, Philadelphia in United States, Arnhem, where I'm living right now in the Netherlands, helped me to build who I am right now. Not only helped me to find my musical identity, but also who I am as a person. So all of those experiences, like, and musical investment that I put in these 3 cities, like, formed me who I am right now and formed my music, formed my musical world.
Wonderful. Sounds very, very rich. You really had a lot of very interesting experiences. I mean, how many musicians, or jazz musicians in particular, could say that they had the experience of taking part in a TV show? that must have been really something, something to remember in life. And Sol, as I said in the beginning of the episode, I can really relate to many aspects of your biography, because I always had this experience of changing countries. And therefore, I totally agree with you. It is something that changes our personality, that forges our personality. The contact to new environment, new people, new ways of talking, dressing, eating, thinking. It changes a lot in one's mind. And what about the different projects you were involved in? I know that you have different formations. I would like you to tell our listeners more about it.
Yes, my projects. So I do have two projects which lit by me. Two projects only play my own compositions, or sometimes I arranged, but mainly we only play my own compositions. So the first one is a piano trio called Sol Jang International Project. Very straightforward contemporary jazz piano trio, I would say. The reason why I named my band as an international project.
That's exactly what I was about to ask you.
So is all of my music inspired my personal experiences or the life lessons that I've learned from 3 different cities where I studied or played jazz. Like that I mentioned before, Philadelphia, Arnhem, and Seoul. I like to call those cities as my jazz cities. And also, this music is quite like a melting pot, like all of those styles, musical styles that I learned in those 3 cities, like emerge together and create its own sound. So there's quite like some mixed genre in my trio music, traditional jazz harmonies, classical music, heavily inspired by film music, and a little bit of like free improvisation aspects, but not a lot. So it's like lyrical, very storytelling music, like somebody open my diary and like read it. Yeah, that's how I always describe. Yeah, and my trio had some gigs around Germany and the Netherlands, but we are mostly hyped about our gig in Greece. We scheduled to play Jazz in July festival in Crete so it's a festival called Jazz in July. So this July, we were very happy just to perform there in Crete. Very beautiful island. We were very, very excited. But the situation, Corona just attacked us. So like all the other gigs, the festival has to postpone. But I'm pretty sure that we can perform there around next year, and all of other gigs, just club gigs, we can play in the near future, hopefully. And my second project is called Soul's Electric Machines, which portrays my other characteristic as a pianist, because I always have a dream to have a acoustic project and more like electric projects, like all the other jazz pianists that I always admire, like Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, Jeroen van Vliet in the Netherlands. So in this project, I mainly play synthesizers with some effects, so very groovy, danceable jazz. And my right hands are free because now I have another lead instrument, which is guitar. So that's also quite fun for me to play, like more comping and back to improvise solo again. And yeah, that's fun. And also fun for composing this project. So for Electric Machines, we plan a Romanian tour during early May this year. First, we tried to postpone all of our gigs in Romania to September, but eventually we had to cancel. Yeah, it was a bummer. And one of our gig turned into a live streaming gig, which we did in early July. But unfortunately, there's some technical issues at first. So like very first 3 minutes, nothing was up here on the screen. But that was very, very nice. And fortunately, we got a gig in Germany for the real audience finally around the end of August. Hopefully, all of my projects and I can play all of the gigs which scheduled around the second half of this year. But also this situation happens to every musician. So this coronavirus pandemic is not a good thing for the musicians and artists, but pretty much for everyone. And just right before the quarantine, I started a new project with a violin player. We were very lucky because we record our material just like one day before the quarantine. Very, very lucky. And we got an opportunity to record few more tunes of ours in the studio around the end of June. Of course, like we had to follow some rules. For instance, like wash my hands before touching the grand piano in the studio and trying to keep the personal distance. And we actually had to go out every 1 hour to have fresh air and come back, and of course like wash our hands again. So with following all of these regulations, still we could record in the studio. So I'm hoping my new duo projects can continuing around this situation, but we have to see.
Yeah, I see what you mean. We all have to wait and see. You mentioned the new normal protocols concerning studio recordings, and I would like you to talk a little bit more about the lockdown in the Netherlands. How was it? How are the measures now? How flexible are they? And also how this quarantine time has been for you personally.
Here in the Netherlands, rules are now a bit loose. So shops and restaurants are opening again and people enjoying the sunny weather, drinking coffee in the terrace, etc. Some of the venues start to have concerts again. Now musicians can rehearse, but another rules for singers and horn players. And musicians can go to the studio for record their stuff. So something is moving, but I have to say still a quite long way to go to return to old normality. For me, I think I'm still figuring out how to be in this new normal. I guess a live stream concerts is now become a thing, which is very understandable. People want to be in a safe zone so they can enjoy nice music in their home with their laptop. So it's very easy. Even though one of my projects, Electric Machines, we did one live stream gig around early July. But I think I still have to catch up on this new trend to like figuring out the technical stuff and all the other stuff as well. And for the venues, like for instance, the venue that I'm working as an organizer, we were thinking about live streaming, but eventually I realized I had to put a lot of effort and I have to research a lot of technical stuff for live stream concerts. But it's a great thing still because people can be safe and musicians can play their tunes. Also, now I'm thinking my online presence so much more than I used to. Quarantine time for me brought me to read a lot, compose, practice, watching movies, and have a lot of time with my friends. And also brought me a lot of thoughts. Still, I guess if we try to think positive, then we can use this quarantine time in a very productive way. But still, I'm very, very happy that things are moving now, at least in the Netherlands, and already changed a lot to compare to March until May. So this is nice. And I hope situation getting better and better and better each and every day. And not only for the musicians, but also for the other small business owners.
And what about the track you've selected for us, Sol?
The music that I want to share with you all is one of my original called Mindstorm. Also one of my trio repertoire as well. I composed this tune around late 2018, I guess. I composed right after when I lost a person that I loved immensely. And it took a few months to finish the composition because I also have to accept the fact that I lost somebody that I loved. And it felt like something happening in my head or my heart. Like the things that you want to avoid but you can't. For instance, like earthquake, snowstorm. and also felt my whole world is turning around the way that I didn't want it to and or also I didn't expect. That's why I named this tune as Mindstorm. To express all of these thoughts, I used meter changes, heavy bass line, rocky chord progressions for improvising part to express oscillation of my world. I record this tune in July last year with my two great German rhythm section players, German bassist called Lukas Keller and drummer Max Hedding. I record with them. We are all living in not only different cities, but different countries as well. I haven't met them for a while now and very, very curious about our sound after this heavy quarantine. But I remember we tried to keep the energy because this tune is quite energetic tune. But at the same time, we try to be subtle, to add different layers into this tune because I wanted to express not only like heavy, stormy feelings, but also the feelings when you have to accept or the feelings that you might feel that you realize that you need to go on, the life goes on. And that's why I also picked this tune. This is such a bizarre situation, all of this pandemic situation, but still life goes on and we're moving on, we're going forward. And also, to me, I think this tune shows my musical directions quite clearly. So that's why I also picked this tune to share with you guys. Just in case, if you want to find out more about my projects or my activities, please visit my website, www.soljang.com. And again, thanks for having me. Thanks. It was nice to participate. This great idea. Thanks to Jasa. And thank you all for listening. I wish the best and stay healthy and safe. And also, I hope you enjoy the music. Thank you.
Well, I thank you once more, dear Sol. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your very kind words. And I wish you all the best with your projects. Thank you. And for you, dear listener, don't forget to check out our QuaranJazz playlist on Spotify, where you find a bonus track from Sol Jang. This was the 21st episode of QuaranJazz. I'm Geisa Fernandes, singer and songwriter from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and I hope to meet you again next week on another episode of QuaranJazz. Meanwhile, you can contact me by visiting my website, geisafernandes.com, and clicking on the contact form. If you're a jazz musician and would like to know more about jazz festivals that accept submissions directly from artists, join the Touring Jazz Musician, a group that I've created and manage on Facebook. And if you like my content and would like to be part of my mailing list, there will be also a link in the description of this episode. Time to bid you farewell. Thank you very much for staying with us. Till next week. And now, ladies and gents, Mindstorm. QuaranJazz. Listen while you're home. QuaranJazz, a podcast by Geisa Fernandes.